like it means nothing.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Let's jump right in. What is VMware vSphere? How many of you run VMware vSphere in your environment? Okay, like 10. Tough crowd. We don't need to get into the details. What we need to know is there are two very important components. The first one is the vCenter server. That's the management server. It manages everything. It manages all the ESXi hosts, the virtual machines, the settings, does performance monitoring, all of that. vCenter server is a Linux appliance. It's managed by VMware, so it looks like a full Linux, but you can't do anything with it. You're not allowed to install your own updates, not allowed to run third-party code, etc. Then we have the ESXi hosts. They're the physical machines that run the hypervisor, and on them the virtual machines run. So the ESXi host is what the attackers want to get to. That's where you can get to the data store, to encrypt the files if you're a ransomware attacker, or steal information, or whatever you want to do. ESXi is not Linux. No protests, all right? It's kind of Linux. I'm not going to get into that debate right now. What we need to know about ESXi is that it is not exactly Linux. So, for example, like with vCenter server, you can't run your own EDR or malware protection or anything. So if you want to monitor this, you have to send out logs over syslog. And the default logging level is kind of debug. So if you've tried to do logging from vSphere, you've noticed that there's a lot of logs, and they're not very useful, all of them. You have to kind of find the needles in the haystack. On the positive note, ESXi is purpose-built to run virtual machines and only do that, which means it's a bit more difficult to get persistence on ESXi than regular Linux. The file system gets rebuilt from scratch every time you reboot it. But most significantly, the last bullet there, everything that runs in ESXi needs to be digitally signed by VMware or their partners. And this is very good, because it means we can't run any foreign code. So if you have a ransomware binary, obviously not signed by VMware, you want to protect your ESXi host, there's a setting called exec install only. So you can flip that to true, and then foreign code cannot run. Right, Nicklas? So if you want to attack this ESXi host here.
That's awesome, isn't it? Well, I have decided to go rogue. I have partnered with Akira and have gained access to the ESXi, and I will try to run the ransomware. Oh, operation not permitted.
No, because I set that setting, so he's not allowed to do it.
Thank you.
Any questions on this? Just flip the setting, you'll be safe.
Perfect.
Yep.
All saved.
Or maybe not.
Or, well, this is a hacker conference. So this security feature, do you think, can we disable it? Well, the answer is, yes, we can. Here you see, I just disable it. And then let's try to run the ransomware again. And it worked.
So was this the real ransomware?
Well, this is actually the real ransomware. That's why we're here, me and Anders. We have done a lot of incident response where the virtual environment have been encrypted. And here you see, you get it sort of Akira extension. And yeah, this is the real deal running. So
yeah,
it wasn't that easy, so we need to do the hard way now. So what are we going to do?
We're going to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Anders Olsson. I work at TruSec in Sweden. I work with infrastructure. I work proactively, helping customers with security reviews, architecture, all of that. But I also work in our incident response team when there are customers that unfortunately have been attacked, gotten ransomware or something, and there is a VMware environment involved. And that's kind of where I've been working with Nicklas.
Yeah, and my name is Nicklas Keijser. I look into malicious code and try to figure out what are we doing. So
we're going to start by talking about the why. Why is this important? I think you already know this part. Then we're going to dive into a bit more how these attacks happen and do some real-life attack examples. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to protect vSphere against these attacks. So, and spoiler alert, it's going to be a combination of the proactive stuff, which is the architecture, operations, all of that, with configuration hardening and logging, detection, and response. And there might be some time for Q&A at the end. If not, we will be around. Please do approach us. We are a very nice people, I think. Let's start with the attacks. So why do we need to do this? Well, vSphere is an attractive ransomware target. All of these clips are from like 2021 when I started doing this. And since then, not much has changed. I mean, there are new variants popping up all the time. This one is from 2023. And people freak out every time there is a new variant. It gets posted on LinkedIn and social media, like, oh, no, you have to protect against this and that. And the thing about these, that there's not much new with the variants. If you can protect yourselves against the first variants, you can protect against the new one. So don't worry, just get the basic protection in place. And it's also not all about ransomware, even though they get a lot of headlines, obviously. There are more sneaky attacks where the attackers don't want to do this like quick in, quick out, smash and grab. They want to do the exact opposite, which is to get in, to stay hidden, steal stuff, monitor other parts of your network, and so on. They might even burn a 0-day to attack you as the target if you have valuable enough stuff. Even MITRE, the organization, got attacked. Their VMware environment had hackers in it for some time. They did a very good write-up on it, so you can learn from that. And more recently, Signia did a write-up on stealthy attacks, where the attacker goes into the ESXi hosts and uses that as their kind of home base because they are so poorly monitored. So it's a perfect place to hide. Then they did outgoing SSH tunnels from the ESXi hosts to other stuff and to their command and control infrastructure. And by the way, most people who reposted this on social media got it completely wrong. They said, SSH is dangerous. Turn it off in ESXi, you'll be fine. But we're not here to scare you. We want to bring a positive message. And that is you can protect yourself against attacks. So how do we know that? Well, we know what the organizations that unfortunately get hit have done wrong. And we also see that the organizations that have done their homework, that have put good architecture, operations, hardening in place, they do not get successful attacks on them as much. Not zero, but a lot less. We also see that organizations that do good monitoring, detection, and response, they also don't get hit as much. And as you can see by my very beautiful Venn diagram here, if you do both of these, there will be even less risk, of course, of a successful attack. There are some pixels there. Not zero, but significantly less. So get started on these things, and you will lower the risk of getting hit. So how do these attacks happen? Well, everybody wants to get to the ESXi hosts, like I said. The most common way to get there is a really simple attack. It's not even an attack, it's just walk right in. It's that they get to the vCenter server. Because if you own the vCenter server, you own the ESXi hosts. And there is not much you can do to protect against that. And how do they get to the vCenter server? Well, they get there through Active Directory. Because a lot of organizations use Active Directory to authenticate vCenter admins. And that is not a good idea, generally. At least not if you use your good old Active Directory where all the users and other stuff lives. And how do you do this? Well, I have my demo environment here. I have a vCenter server called .10, an ESXi host called .122. This host is, whoops, hardened, SSH not running. We can even enable this thing called lockdown mode in the ESXi host, which means that even if I type the correct root password here, I won't be able to log in, neither through web nor SSH. So as an attacker, I want to get into this ESXi host, right? And to do that, I need valid credentials, which let's pretend I don't know for this host. And there is no obvious way to see here in the UI that you can change passwords in ESXi from vCenter Server. You can do it through the API or through PowerShell, though. So I'm going to set some variables here. I'm going to authenticate. Whoops. So which user am I using? Well, I told you that I had set all the nice settings for this ESXi host. However, there is an admin here called Anders. Now, pretend this is an Active Directory user. I don't have an AD in my lab environment, but this is the way it looks in most environments. So there's an Active Directory connected. One or more users or groups have these high privileges on these objects in the vCenter server, which means I can now authenticate as this user. And use that. Then I set the target user that I want to change on the ESXi host, which is root in this case. I set a new password. Note, new password. I can make up whatever I want here.
No, he didn't know the root password. Note that, sort of, he has changed the root password.
So I connect to the vCenter server, I target this specific host, I open an ESX CLI shell to this host, and just going to use ESX CLI to see that I'm on the right one. Yes, that's the one I'm targeting. And then I do this ESX CLI system account set, which means now I'm setting, using all of these variables that I just collected, which is username, password. It returns true, which means I have now set a new password on this ESXi host. So, but how do I get in? SSH wasn't open. Well, I'm an admin, right? I can do whatever I want. So now SSH is running. I'm going to skip to the next part directly here. It was lockdown mode on the host. Yeah, but I'm an admin. I can just turn off lockdown mode. So now I can use the new password that I set. I am in the ESXi host. Simple as that. So I don't even need. Oh, thank you. I don't even need.
You can't pop calc in ESXi. Yeah. That's the problem here, though.
So I'm not using any vulnerabilities. I'm not using some stolen password or credentials or anything. I'm just logging in the way it's supposed to work, right? Now that I have SSH access, I can also transfer files into this host. There we go. Now I just transferred my own mock binary. It's not a real Akira that Nicklas used. This is just something that I compiled myself. I can log in. Whoops. And there it is. There is my executable test, which I will use a bit later. So yeah, that's the most common attack that we see, sadly enough. So don't use your general purpose Active Directory to authenticate vCenter admins, please. Other ways to get in. Well, we can attack through the admin client. The administrators might have saved their password in the browser password manager, for example. Or our favorite, they have a passwords.txt on the desktop. And this happens a lot more than you would like to know. Other ways to get in, the backup application usually has very high privileges on the vCenter server, which can be used. A lot of attackers use this, actually. Another way to get in, I haven't seen this in real life, but this is possible. If you make a backup of the vCenter server, you can dump the configuration. That's the preferred way to do it. If you pick this up, you will have the database of the vCenter server in it. That one contains all the passwords that vCenter uses for its service accounts in each ESXi. So that way you can attack the ESXi hosts. What else? Well, you can attack through the virtual machines. Here you do need security vulnerability, but there has been plenty of those. So I think in the last 4 years, there has been like one serious vulnerability each year, where you have been able to go from a virtual machine to the hypervisor through a vulnerability in the virtual USB device in each virtual machine. So these you should take out of the virtual machines unless you need them. Also, if you attack from a VM to the hypervisor, you can also attack other VMs. Oh, there we go. And this is dangerous because if you get in through a VM in one security zone, you get to the hypervisor, you can attack a VM in another security zone. So these might be network-wise air-gapped, but if they're running on the same hypervisor, you can kind of traverse those air gaps, which is, not good. How many of you know about VMware Cloud Foundation? It's basically the larger package that VMware wants every customer to buy now. Instead of just vSphere, buy the whole thing. That one includes something called the SDDC manager, which is like a manager of managers. So if you get that one, now you suddenly own both vCenter and ESXi hosts. So that's another way to get in. So how did these attacks happen? Well, I did the stuff on the left-hand side, this, not the port scan, but the other stuff I did in the first demo, and I uploaded this supposed ransomware. What happens then, Nicklas?
Well, as you remember from me when I was doing my attack, I shmodded the binary, made it executable, and then I disabled this protection to run it, and then after that I can execute the ransomware. Remember, Anders thought this is like a purpose-built ESXi, so the ways to attack in ESXi to perform ransomware, this is sort of the path they need to follow as well. So that we also keep in mind that there are not infinite ways of targeting an ESXi environment. Though this is sort of where I come in here. I look at this malicious code. So as Anders said, I run ransomware almost on a daily basis. But to investigate, not to do the bad stuff. So how do the ESXi ransomware or malware work? I want to walk you through a couple of use cases where it gives you this kind of insight. This one roams around the internet for a couple of years ago. It was called ESXi ARGs. That one actually targeted ESXi environments that were directly connected to the internet. So, Anders, what do you say? Doing remote administrative work over internet directly through an ESXi environment? Good or bad security practice?
I hope none of you have your ESXi hosts on the internet, or vCenter server, or any part of your internal environment.
Well, then probably you had a visitor from this one. Just when it hit, you could actually search for the ransomware note. And I did it just after it happened. Roughly 2,000 environments got hit. And this is very interesting to understand. It is actually quite easy to look into the code, but they are kind of all similar. So that's why I choose this one to start with. And it actually contains two files. It is one called encrypt.sh, which is sort of a script, and one called encrypt that actually does just the encryption. So the script passes on the files to the encrypt binary. So if we look into these ones, so we start with the script, which starts with the directory you want to upload the binary to, which is the /temp. Noted Anders does it as well. I would say like in a super big majority of all the ransomware cases, it's the temp folder they love because that's where they can put the ransomware binary. After that, they enumerated all the VMs to shut them down, so that they make this sort of list of VMs that are up and running. After that, they used this kind of kill-9 command. Anders, what do you say? Best practice or not? If you want to shut down a VM, kill-9?
There are more elegant ways to shut down a virtual machine in ESXi, but if your only goal is to destroy it anyway, you might as well.
Yeah, you might pull the handbrake. So, so this kind of indicates they don't really know all the ins and outs of VMware. After that, they target different files, but I would say it's mainly the VMDK files. This doesn't work, but it says like it's a big list of find different extensions, and it's the VMDK one they were looking for. And then if we go into the binary, I would highlight here, this is sort of the main, it's where they sort of create, because how ransomware works is that they have a public key that they want to encrypt the key, because they generate the symmetric key on the host, and that's where they encrypt the file, and then they put the file, the key at the end of the file, and then they encrypt that key with the public key. This is sort of to make it more speedy. So this is sort of how the main function works, and also this kind of gives this flow in a quite easy manner to read. After that, they had this kind of helper file. So if you just dash help, this sort of is what you get, which, me as a reverse engineer makes my life a bit easier. I don't need to figure this out. I just dash help. So, why do they do this? Like, didn't they write the ransomware themselves? Well, the thing is, like, these are ransomware as a service actors, so they distribute this kind of malware to others, and they are users of that code as well. So sometimes they need help to run it, which I've encountered a few times. Then becomes the ransomware itself, and this is called a ransomware sandwich, where they use this symmetric key. In this case, they used a little bit odd encryption algorithm called Sosamanuk, but they read the file, encrypt it, and then sort of writes to the file. So when you see this combination of API calls, this is sort of where the really bad stuff is happening. Though the ESXi ARCs, I would say was more, let's say, not a very advanced one, but if you can find that one publicly available if you want to look deeper into this one. It's a very good case to study to understand it. If you look at the more advanced one, this is the case we did with ABIS Locker. One of the first things they do is they enumerate the folders they don't want to encrypt, because they want to target VMDK files. So if you run it on everything, stuff will break. And as a ransomware actor, they don't want to break stuff, they just want to lock stuff. So if you pay them, they will unlock it. So they have this big folder of exclusions. They also have this exclusion of file endings. And here they have the .crypt and .temp, TMP. And the .crypt is their own file extension. So if they by accident would run the ransomware twice, then they don't want to double encrypt the encrypted file already. And actually the .temp file, that is a sort of a temporary file during encryption. So if they would start multi-threading, they don't want to encrypt the temporary file as well. So, because if you start double encrypting, it will probably break.
Why would they do that? I thought they were very organized and had flawless code.
Well, let's keep that in mind, though. But they do make mistakes, as you noticed in the beginning here. That's why we ended this presentation. No, the thing is, like, also before they remember the other one, they used kill-9. In this case, they use the more, I would say, advanced one. They use the built-in commands to shut down the VMs and then to delete the snapshots. But as we said, like in one of these cases, we managed to pull out the log file. So we said, and Anders said, are they elite hackers? So remember in the beginning, if you look on those arrows, so this is the log file. Every log entry is something they typed at the terminal. So we see the first one, it says dir. So Anders, do you remember what he said in the beginning? ESXi, it was Linux, but not Linux.
We can agree it's not Windows, at least, right?
It's not a Windows, so. And then if you look at the uname-a, which means, they don't really know what kind of system am I on. I need to understand what I'm looking at. And then we continue. Something is not working with the ransomware binary, so they tried sudo, su. And that doesn't really work either, does it? Or?
No.
No. So this is not a Linux machine, so sudo doesn't work. Same comes for when you see the slashes. Like, is it a Windows or is it a Windows or Linux? Well, hard to know, hard to know. We can see they actually copy a new file and they start typing away. Then you find another uname, and then you find a third uname. So do you think you get a different output every time you put a uname? Because it gives me the terminal says what do you say? VMware, does it provide you? Yeah, now I'm on Windows. Now I'm a so they say that, you know, I'm a Linux kernel. Finally, they managed to get this running. So I think this is an interesting use case, sort of, in the sense of, and we see this quite many times when they come to the ESXi. They fail because they're used to Linux and not the ESXi. That's some of the stuff doesn't work, and they struggle. And also that this is a very well, I would say, useful detection as well. Because, yeah, if you start seeing this command, you probably have some other visitor in your environment. I want to give a shout. I'm actually going to talk here at 9 as well, together with my colleague Matthias. But this is a quite recent new ransomware actor, and this is their post for trying to recruit associates. And if you look closely, their ransomware also can be used on ESXi. So how do we protect?
Yes. So I talked about this setting called exec install only. I call it VMware's best kept secret, because they've had this around for a long time. It's not been documented, and they don't talk about it as much as they should do, because this has potential. As you can see, it did block the first attempt, but then we were able to circumvent it. So I started writing blog posts about this in like 2021. So if you Google exec install only, you used to get a picture of me. And now we have a more generic picture of this blog post, but it's still that blog post that scores higher than VMware's own posts, because they talk about enforcing the setting, which is not the same thing as the setting itself, and they talk about deactivating it, so that if it breaks something, you can deactivate it. Very uncommon, by the way.
I just tried this before getting on stage, by the way. And if you press picture, Anders is still very highly ranked, so yep, on the picture part.
So just to confuse the users, there's 3 different kind of flavors of this command. There is a boot kernel variant of it. It's been around forever, but not on by default. So that one is false by default. You can flip it to true. That's what I recommend that you do. Then there's the runtime setting. This is the one we saw in the first demo. So it's available in ESXi 8, and it's on by default. But this one is 1 as opposed to 0, just to confuse users. Then there is this enforcing the setting, and that's when you use TPM and secure boot to kind of seal this setting. And if this is on and you turn off the setting, reboot the host, secure boot and TPM is going to figure out something is wrong, and it's going to purple screen the host rather than starting it up. Great, right? So I showed you this runtime setting. This is the one we did in the first demo. Turn it off. More information in the blog post here. We have the boot kernel setting. This is the one you should flip. The trick with this one is that when you change the setting from false to true or from true to false, you need to reboot the host in order for the setting to take effect. And this is good. You need to remember to do it. So it blocks ransomware just like the other one did. But if you set it back to false, it's still going to block it before you reboot. So great. Now you've bought yourselves like, what, 5-10 minutes for a host to reboot. Can you react that quickly in your monitoring and response? Maybe, maybe not. And then oh yeah, by the way, this is the new slide that we have. We found a playbook for this new group.
Yeah, that's the one that we just mentioned, Cicada 3301. As you mentioned, this kind of hidden gem of VMware with the boot kernel setting, they figured out. So on the last row in the playbook, which they gave out to their associates, turn this one on, or do these 2 commands wherever you are. So
yeah. So they know about the 2 first flavors, but maybe not about the 3rd one. I'm not sure. The 3rd one being this enforcement. So you turn this on as well. Encryption set require exec install only true. Turn it to true. And then, like I said, the host will purple screen if you reboot it. But like the other ones, it can also be disabled by the threat actor, unfortunately. They just have to set it to false before rebooting, and they've circumvented it. So it's a kind of recurring theme here. There are good protections, but they can be disabled. And that's why we're going to talk about the logging and monitoring, because you need to kind of do both. So throw in as many hurdles as possible in the path of the attacker and put monitoring in each and every step so you can catch them. The good thing about ESXi 8 is that there is a lot better logging about this. So this is me trying to execute the file and failing because of the protection. This is me turning off the protection. Note this long, angry error message saying, hey, you're going to get ransomware if you do this. Pretty clear. And this is me succeeding in executing the file after disabling the protection. So you should alert on this, obviously. But when you see the last message, it's kind of too late. And when you see the first message, you're 30 seconds early or something, if this is the only protection that exists. Other protections we can do. Remember 10 minutes ago when I said, if I own your vCenter server, there's nothing you can do to prevent me from owning your ESXi hosts. Well, turns out there is. So when they released 8.0, they had this cryptic message in the documentation that says you can prevent VPX user from changing other users' passwords, but no documentation on it. So I started asking questions. I got hold of a person called William Lamb at VMware, great guy. He helped me chase down engineering and made them actually document this feature. How do you use it? Well, you use ESX CLI system account set. You remove the shell access for the VPX user, then you're fine. So the way it works is VPX user is the kind of the service account that vCenter uses in each ESXi host to do stuff, like the regular management configuration, but also to manipulate local accounts. And apparently, this shell access, if you remove that, it also means you remove the ability to manipulate local accounts. So let's do that. So now I'm in the ESXi host. I can do ESX CLI system account list. You'll see all the accounts by default have this shell access set to true. Then I can set this to false for VPX user. Oops. So now you see VPX user shell access false. So then if I redo this thing that I did in the first demo, where I tried to, I need to go out first. There we go. So I tried to reset the password that I did in the first demo. Now it's going to fail, which is good. It's going to say only users with shell access can make these changes. Awesome, right? So I went back home, started blogging about this, wrote about how good this is. Oh, wait. There is a way to circumvent this as well. I found a way to circumvent this, and it was really easy. It was just too easy. So I got a bit worried. I reported this to VMware. And told them, hey, there's a really easy way to walk around this. Can guess what it is. It's going to take a while to do it. So I had to wait a couple of weeks for them to get back. They were able to recreate this workaround that I did. And I thought, great, I'm going to get my first CVE. This is very exciting. So the way to circumvent this is to use something called host profiles. It's a feature in vCenter server where you define kind of a template for the settings of all your ESXi hosts, and then you apply it on them. And so what I did, I created a host profile that said root should have this password, and then I applied it to my test host. And even though it was locked down, this worked. So now it's not still running. So I can set a new password. I don't have to use the traditional method. I'll just work around it. And after a while, they got back to me and they said, good news, we fixed the problem. So now in the documentation, it says you can circumvent this protection. So thank you. No CVE for me. It's a feature, not a bug. And this was 2 years ago, and this still hasn't been fixed. So you can still walk around it. So there we go. Now it's done. Now I can SSH into this one with a new password. Not that you could see that I typed something else, but it was a new password, I promise. And I'm back in.
A new shell. Applause.
Thank you. So again, good protection can be circumvented. On On top of this, there is one more way that you can circumvent or avoid using the local accounts to get into ESXi hosts. And that is joining the ESXi host to Active Directory. Because again, I mean, if you're an admin, if you're an administrator on a host in vCenter, you are allowed to go to, here we go, authentication services. You can join the ESXi host itself to Active Directory, not just the vCenter server, but the ESXi host. And then you can also define on the ESXi host which AD users and or groups should be administrators on this ESXi host. And then you use that. And we started seeing this in incidents when we did the forensics around 2 years ago, that there were a lot of hosts joined to AD. So we asked the customers, like, what are you doing? Why did you join them to AD? And they say, we didn't. Oh, it was the threat actors that started doing this. So maybe they wanted to avoid detection or something. If you have logging and alerting on root password being changed and use it to log in, well, you won't see that because now there is an AD account logging in instead. I don't know. Very simple way. So how do you avoid this? Well, don't let your ESXi hosts be able to reach your Active Directory. Maybe for NTP DNS, but not LDAP and the AD stuff. So that's the best way to prevent them from being joined to the Active Directory. More information in this blog post. Other protections, this is a good one actually. So there is a weird feature in ESXi. Like I said, by default, it's supposed to only accept signed vib files. And vib files are the installation packages that you use when you install stuff. So they're supposed to be signed by VMware. But Mandiant did a write-up on this, very good. I have the link in a bit. They discovered that threat actors installed non-signed vibs, and then they did like --force at the end, to which ESXi replied, oh, it looks like you really want to install this unsigned vib. Well, there you go. I think this hasn't been fixed either. I haven't been able to test this, but I don't think this has been fixed either. Good thing is, this we can avoid by simply enabling secure boot in the underlying physical server that ESXi runs on. And this is also highly recommended because secure boot doesn't break anything except if you run very weird software in it. So go home, enable secure boot in your ESXi hosts if you haven't already. Link to Mandiant's post. So this brings us to the logging and detection. So if you've tried to send logs from vSphere, meaning vCenter and ESXi, it looks something like this, right?
Are you ready?
So can you see anything useful in these logs? Can you see anything useful now that I paused it? There's a lot of debug logs, right? This is the stuff that VMware support needs when they troubleshoot your issues with ESXi or vCenter. So it's not really good for security logging. There are security logs in there somewhere. You just need to find them. So how about this? Oh, session opened for root. This looks very interesting, right? We should alert on this. Root is logging into our ESXi hosts. Dangerous. Oh, it happens every minute. OK. Maybe not that dangerous then. So on to the next one, and so on. So we've put hundreds of hours in doing this, sifting through the logs. I mean, this is what we do in forensics as well, so we kind of knew what to look for. But there is very little documentation from VMware on how to do this, unfortunately. So it's very much finding a needle in the haystack. Some detections examples that we have. Nicklas?
I mean, like, yeah, that's, as we said, it is possible to detect, if you look for, what needle to look for. So for instance, we have this sort of when the SSH access is enabled. So if you work in an organization that doesn't have SSH enabled, this one popping out should raise an alert. So it is possible. And also the one we saw where we turn off the ESXi execute install only. When you turn this one off, you can actually dig this one out. It's from syslog. And I would say any log message that says ransomware, good or bad, says something you should react on. I mean, it's a 110% true positive. So it is, grabbed for ransomware. And if you find it, act, I would say. though we have worked a bit with this, and one of the things we have done is we created a understanding the context from one of the ransomware attacks. So we push out these logs and know what we look for. And for instance, here to the right, we actually have this view looking at what are the commands typed from the terminal. And just by looking at that, you can quite easily start seeing, is there something bad? Is there something that is done by the user? Let's see if you would see someone trying to run the executable encrypt. Does that make sense in the context of ESXi? I would say 1 billion% no. So, I mean, this kind of stuff helps. So it is possible. It takes a bit of time, but that's what we can do. So, how do we summarize this, Anders?
Well, as we've shown, there are lots of good protection mechanisms, but many of them can be circumvented in one way or another. So we have to combine, again, architecture, hardening, plus detection and response. Then we can be more safe. So, again, you want to be this little guy in the middle here with both the good proactive security and the good detection and response. Then you'll be the king or queen of your environment, and everybody will love you. Easy as that. So, before we go to Q&A, we have 4 minutes left. We just want to say thank you very much for coming to our session. I hope you got something useful out of it.
Thank
you. Now, if someone can yell out the question so we can hear it, we can repeat it. Who has the first question? Nobody. Good. We have 3 minutes left. I want to show you my favorite slides. Oops.
Well, you can talk to us afterwards as well,
So we have this scenario here where you have been ransomware. This is a timeline. I apologize for the graphics here. I made them myself. It's Saturday now. On Friday, you got this call that says everything is down. So this is clearly where the ransomware happened. So the forensics will kind of build this timeline backwards together with you. And the customer will also try to see if they have backups that have not been destroyed. And in this case, we were lucky. So we have nightly backups here. So you see Friday, back Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday. And then the forensics will determine that it was on Tuesday, that's where the threat actor got in. Sometime on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they got the Active Directory. On Friday evening, they started the encryption. Now, the million-dollar question is, which restore point do you go back to from your backups? Do you go to Tuesday before the threat actor got in? Or do you go to Friday, which is the closest one before the encryption was made? How many of you vote for Tuesday? Quite a few. How many of you vote for Friday? Fewer.
How many vote for paying the ransomware?
So if you listen to the vendors, they will always say, go to Tuesday, because that's where it's safe, right? No threat actor in your environment. Going back to Friday would be dangerous because you have a threat actor in your backups when you restore them. So they have some kind of control. They're just hovering their finger over the encryption button, right? The thing is, we always go for Friday. Because imagine going to tell your organization, oh, by the way, everything that happened in the last 4 days is now gone. Go to finance department, like, oh, all the invoices that have gone in or out, you don't know about them anymore. That's not going to fly. 18 hours even is horrible for lots of systems to lose 18 hours of data. But we go for Friday backup, but we don't just restore it back as it was. So we put a lot of effort into going back, restoring it into an isolating environment, cleaning it. How do you clean it? Well, that's what forensics does, right? You need to know what to clean. You need to know what kind of persistence they had. Also, where do we restore it to? If our VMware environment, where all the virtual machines run in, if that's been compromised, we can't start restoring stuff to that, which makes it even more important to protect the VMware environment. And if it has been breached, like how do you clean a vCenter server? Or do you need to rebuild it from scratch? How do you clean an ESXi host? Do you need to rebuild them from scratch? This is where you will thank yourself if you have, before the attack, developed some kind of automated installation that can do this easily for you. Reinstall ESXi hosts, get the configuration back on them. Good. Now we are out of time. Like we said, come ask us questions. We are not dangerous. And thank you for your time.